Now, it's my pleasure to continue on this today's C2C Summit Textiles and Supply Chain with our second panel with our topic Scaling Big Picture. So continuing our talk and diving more into more of those best practices where we've already heard a lot of stories and successes, but also challenges, and I think we are going to cover all of that. And of course, just to mention, I'm not sure if I already mentioned this, there is actually German translation for everyone who needs it. Just click on the button on the right hand side of your Zoom where you're in for our participants. And by the way, we are recording this, of course, and will put all videos soon online of YouTube, because some of my participants in our breakout session said there was so many content. Of course, it has been said so much, and of course we will upload this all so you can re-watch all the things we've done today within this conference funded by the Ministry for Economic Development of Germany. So I'm really happy to introduce to you our next panel, and I'd like to start introducing Friederike Priebe first. She's team leader, Cradle to Cradle Textiles at EPEA in Hamburg. She has a bachelor's degree of engineering with focus on clothing, technology and management, and since October 2017 she's team lead for she's at EPEA, she's with EPEA, and since January 2019 she's team lead Cradle to Cradle Textiles, and she's driving forward the implementation of recyclable textiles according to the Cradle to Cradle principle, optimizing in all aspects of the textile industry. Friederike, thanks that you are with us, and probably you could add some of those aspects. What are you doing at EPEA in Hamburg?
Hi, Tim. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for your introduction. Yes, I'm Friederike Priebe, working at EPEA, part of Drees and Sommer. We are a consulting company and innovation partner. We are 60 scientists and engineers, and we're working on the implementation of a circular economy. We have been founded by Professor Michael Braungart, who is one of the inventors of the Cradle to Cradle principle, and also the visionary thinker for a world without waste, which is our common goal, I think, for this whole summit and overall all industries. Since 2019, we are part of Drees and Sommer, and this means we are working for all industries, for the real estate sector, for packaging, paper print, for detergents, cleaning products, consumer products, and yes, like you said, in my textile technician background, a background also in the sector of the textile industry, with brands, with suppliers, with fiber suppliers, with textile chemical suppliers who will also, I think, play a big role in our discussion today. I'm heading this textile department, and I'm happy to discuss with you the most current challenges that we're facing, and also focusing on finding the solutions for that. So I'm really happy to join that discussion today.
Thanks, Friederike. We're really happy to have you with us. So our next guest is Alexander Meyer zum Felde. He's partner and associate director for impact and sustainability and circular economy at Boston Consulting Group. He holds an MBA in international business and finance, and is with BCG since 2010. Before, he worked at Goldman Sachs, and he's an expert, as I said, on sustainability and circular economy. And he's leading the Boston Consulting Group on waste systems, deposit systems, and recyclers. And he's associate director for total societal impact. In addition to that, is that correct, Alex?
Yeah, that's correct. And thanks, Tim, for having me. And maybe short intro, indeed, I'm responsible for the circular economy topics that BCG Boston Consulting Group does. We are a leading strategy management firm, and we're working with clients globally on those topics across industries. Obviously, namely, especially CPG, consumer goods companies around the packaging topics, but also quite a bit with the textile industry. And within that role, we have completed a couple of projects with the textile industry, working also on cradle-to-cradle products. Namely C&A, for example, was a large brand that also publicly announced the collaboration a couple of years ago, where we really modeled through and helped our clients to take their core products, even in a fast fashion market, to redesign the supply chains, to think through the materials that are being used in the products to make those more sustainable, but also the corporate processes behind it, right? So the production processes, be it in India, in China, and Brazil, where all these garments are manufactured, and then thinking through how you can actually close the loop, make those materials sustainable, but also think through the downstream value chain on how those materials are being used more wisely, used more frequently, and then being taken back, repaired, refurbished. And if the refurbishment doesn't take place anymore, what kind of waste management systems, recycling systems would need to be set up? What kind of technologies do we have in place in order to make the whole circle more sustainable, but at the same time, and I think that's one of the aspects we'll be discussing later as well, keeping the commercial side in the game as well. So that also the recycling, for which most of the industry currently is not incentivized, also remains commercially viable. So I'm more than happy to join the panel and the discussion today.
Yeah, welcome to our stage here in Berlin. Thanks, Alex. And our next guest I'd like to introduce is Andreas. Andreas Bothe. He's head of CSR and sustainability at Bay City Textilhandels GmbH. He holds a degree in textile engineering, and 5 years he was with the Otto Group in the topics of quality management, especially for textiles, and 12 years at Chibo as well in quality management and key supply management. And since March 2015, he's head of CSR and sustainability at Bay City, which is part of the Schmidt Group. Holds his own brands as well as logistics with more than 2,000 customers and partners in 50 countries. So, Andreas, would you give us some more information about what Bay City is doing and what your role is over there in detail?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you very much for having the chance to join this panel of experts here already on this important topic. So important topic for us, as we are a company who served all types of customer in terms of textile importing mainly from Asia. As we have our own organization in Asia, we have offices in Bangladesh, which is our main market, as well as in China, and we're looking after other countries as well from their hubs. But here we are based in Norderstedt, close to Hamburg. And from here onwards, we are having the head office of the Schmidt Group, where Bay City and of course Chiemsee, which you can see on the other side, is a part of that, I have to say, family-owned business. And within a long history, since 1906, actually, they started along the whole supply chain. They have developed from handling or dealing with fibers to yarns to fabrics, and finally up to the 70s of former centuries, they started their textile importing business on the ready-made garments. So we have been through the whole supply chain. We have seen what was on the way, what obstacles and challenges were there. And we reached a point now where sustainability is not just a growing issue, it's already there, it's implemented since a long time. We have our own team, which I'm heading off in Asia. So from this point onwards, we are really focused on all the different sustainability certificates until we reached the topic of cradle to cradle a couple of years back. But I think we're going to discuss this more in detail later on this talk. So thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, Andreas. And my pleasure as well is now to introduce our fourth panelist on this panel today, Mesbah Sabur, founder of Circularize. Nice to have you on stage, Mesbah. He holds a Bachelor in Industrial and Product Design and a Master in Integrated Product Design from Delft University of Technology. And this is not his first company. Actually, he has founded, as far as I see, in 2013, his first startup called Unexion, and also tech-like online platform to match students and job offers. back in these days. He's one of the Green Biz 30 under 30 leaders in 2020. Congratulations. And yes, he is co-founder of Circularize. Really happy to have you on board, and you founded Circularize in 2016 with Jordi de Vos. So probably just a quick introduction what you are doing with Circularize, and of course we dive into all those topics later on in our discussion.
Great, thank you so much for that kind introduction. What we're doing for the past 4 years is bringing transparency to global supply chains, to introduce a level of transparency in supply chains when it comes to manufacturing products all the way to the raw materials that has never been possible before. It's obviously, as more and more people are agreeing on this, is a very, very important topic in that quest towards a more sustainable world, to have more data and more insight in what's happening with material flows and how are they manufactured. And in the short term, I would say the value that we bring is really to prove to brands and OEMs that their supply chains are having sustainable practices. So that can mean that they're using recycled content or renewable or organic materials in their supply chain. And within our tools, they can very easily find out how that is manufactured and get the proof without absolute certainty, without having uncertainties in the supply chain.
Thank you very much, Mesbah. So stage is open, I guess. I'd like to start with Friederike. Coming back to you, Friederike. In terms of your role, when we're talking about developing textiles, I mean, we've already heard and discussed a lot about the length and the complexity of global supply chains within the textile sector. What exactly is your role, and what's your added value when it comes to those various suppliers and within this strong complexity? What is your role then, and what are you adding? What piece of the puzzle you are adding to a cradle-to-cradle product? Can't hear right now. Wait just a second. I'm not sure if that's the problem of us or just a studio problem.
It was my problem.
Ah, it's your problem. Okay, so let's go.
So we're as EPEA, as a know-how trustee, we are adding that last piece to the puzzle that has been lost long before. So imagine the textile industry got into the globalization process in the 70s. And this is when that know-how about materials, about ingredients, about production processes got lost and got spreaded on a real global level. So today, in such a big economy as the textile industry is, we are bringing back this know-how and not back to the brand, but back to the quality assessment of a product in terms of circularity and sustainability. So this means we, at one point, investigate what really is a supply chain of a product. This is also an information that has been lost in the global textile economy. And on the other hand, we bring in the assessment of the materials and ingredients that are in a product. So we act here as a third party, as a know-how trustee for those information, and assess it regarding the cradle-to-cradle principle. And so to do this on the various level, we have to connect a lot in the supply chain. And as for example, as we work together with Andreas, also on having not only just one single supply chain that has this cradle-to-cradle quality, but also have to look for chances to scale up the process to gain such a knowledge. We have to come up with some better ideas than just working on, for example, on one product and then scaling it not up and just have a single collection with what is cradle to cradle. And here we need also some brand strategies on how to market and bring out those kinds of products. So this is the added value we bring. We have the network and the material know-how in the supply chains on materials, and we bring back, or we bring in the solution for the bias that you have with transparency. And I hope we can focus a bit in the next hour on the topic of transparency, because or the thing what I want to give in here regarding transparency in the textile supply chain is that for topics around social fairness, for example, transparency really is your asset. So you really need transparency, and you want to give out your transparency so that you can assess the social fairness of a product. So how much are the wages that are paid? Are those wages fair? Are the working conditions safe, and so on? So here, for transparency really is an asset. But when it comes to materials, the asset that you have as a company providing a material is not to give out your information transparent to the supply chain, because the know-how of the material is your USP. It's your differentiation point from your competitors. So really, you don't want to give that out. And I think this aspect of transparency, we need to make this differentiation for the discussion. And
I think we later on come more to the aspects of transparency.
Yeah.
What I find really interesting is that you said in the 70s, roundabout, this know-how, what's inside the supply chain, what chemicals, process chemicals, etc., was lost. I'd like to hand over to Alex, who's just introduced the case of CNA. We talk more about cases because, as we heard, you've, Friederike, have worked with Andreas at Bay City. Even though before we come to probably hear more about your cooperation, Alex, do you have the same idea about this? Do you feel that this got lost, and probably you have a reason for it? Because I'm really asking myself, how came that we have all those issues nowadays, and do you probably have an answer to that?
I don't have an answer, but I will try to explain how we got there. Yeah, and then the question is really, how do we change it so we come back to a more sustainable system? I mean, first of all, if you think about larger corporates, yeah, they're extremely complex structures to manage. Don't take this as an excuse, but to understand it a little bit, why we can't just change the system within 1 or 2 days. Yeah, these businesses have had, let me say, different incentive schemes for the past 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah, if you are managed through, let me say, premiums in the sense of making volumes, getting increasing turnover, and the roles of responsibility, water treatment, sustainable material usage, and these kind of things did not play a primary role in the last 30, 40 years. Yeah, the awareness of the sustainability topic was simply not there. Then obviously you streamline your business and operations to become more effective, to increase or to decrease the time that it takes to market. So you're optimizing your supply chains. Number one. Number two is, if the regulators do allow you to do it, or actually do incentivize you to do it, obviously you're managing your business to improve profits, to increase turnover. Lastly, if the consumers do demand exactly those type of products, so let me say, you want every 3 months a new fashion line, you expecting every couple of weeks new layouts, new designs, and these kind of things. That's how our societal system has been set up over the last X years to exactly deliver upon this, right? Whether this is right or wrong, it's just the matter how our society operates. And you can see that reflected in businesses. It did not really play a significant role to create transparency about where your materials come from. Yeah, you sometimes have second, third, fourth order suppliers. You don't even know who's supplying into your suppliers, but it didn't really play a role. You didn't have to manage that. You had to make sure that you're delivering on time, you're getting the right quality, you're delivering at low price. And that's changing now, luckily, but slowly but surely, yeah. And what you see now is the whole discussion around carbon regulation or the plastic tax introduction in the EU, or the whole taxonomy discussion for corporates. That's the right discussions, but moving slowly and surely. And so in order for management teams, for businesses to readjust these tremendous, huge value chains that have delivered well and have been optimized for time, for cost over the last 20, 30, 40 years, to readjust that and just bring new aspects into the equation is actually not easy to manage. And then secondly, even if you are managing that well, the incentive schemes are still not where we would like them to be. Yeah. Let me be quite explicit here. As long as you can sell t-shirts for 2 or 3 euros, and the majority of consumers rather sources those than those that cost you $8 or $9 or euros. That's how our economy currently works, and that's where we as society really have a role to play. On the one hand, as consumers, certainly demonstrating and voting with our wallets, as a regulator, that we set increased boundaries for those who do not speak up, be it the planet, be it the poorer, yeah. And third pillar, certainly as an industry, move faster and take the whole topic around responsibility more serious, yeah. But that's really the challenge you have. You always have the trade-off discussion between sustainability, between margins, and so on. And for the last 2-3 years, and I think that's the good message, the first time we're actually seeing that commercial success is directly linked to responsible and sustainable behavior. Still not in the dimension we needed, but the more we're moving into that direction, I think the faster we will come back to a more responsible behavior, more responsible supply chains. But until we scale those large scale and scale those to the dimension we need, because I mean, in Europe, we can afford it, or most people can still afford it, yeah. But unless we're not serving 2, 3, 4, 500 million people, unless we're serving 5 or 8 billion people, we will still see those environmental challenges.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Thanks very much. Just to come back to you guys, everyone who has a question, you can send us your questions via chat. So we get them here on stage. There's no questions yet. We will continue with our talk. But if you like, send us your questions, and I would be more than happy to handle them here on stage. So Alex has covered, I think, so much important issues regarding consumer responsibility, regarding politics and legal. Andreas, coming back to you, at Bay City, a family-run, family-owned company, and because we've heard a lot about those multinationals and those complex supply chains, even though your supply chain is complex as well, and you're still a reasonably a big company and not the smallest. When we come back to that point, which Friederike stated out, we've lost that feeling, we've lost the idea, probably the information back in the 70s, globalization, about those quality aspects. And coming to your company now, in our talk beforehand, you stated out that you're going to start with your products, developing them in a cradle-to-cradle way. You already had with one of your biggest clients. Still, many other big competitors, they don't do it. What was the incentive for you then as a producer, taking this probably responsibility? Otherwise, it might also be an economic decision. I would really be interested to hear more about your way of developing the company itself on this path.
Yeah, the thing is that actually, as I said at the beginning, as the company, we're a textile trading company. And I also mentioned that in the 70s, like Friederike mentioned, we're starting with this ready-made garment businesses. So we're shifting the production. Also, we accompanied them, shifting them outside of Germany. And this was also the time where it starts with the textile and clothing industry in Germany, slowly at this time, but it was decreasing. So for example, myself, I did it, or when I was a youngster after school, I started my career in this business as the men's tailor. I did an apprentice as a proper men's tailor for 3 years in a company which is no longer existing anymore. There's the name maybe existing, but the company itself is not existing. When I passed the building where I did my apprentice, there is a big parking place with a big supermarket chain, so everything is gone. So everything is gone, even the knowledge, the people, and the feeling, the attitude, everything is gone. So the garments been wearing has been changed over the couple of years. Now we have reached a level where everybody is very casual, not just only for home office purpose. Also before, I think the way of dressing up has been changed. So this is also part of the movement and the industry at the moment. But coming back to that point of working together, it's also an issue. When I did my studies as a garment in the textile engineer, I come to notice, was introduced to also a group of companies that's called Dialog Textilbekleidung, which is now over 30 years old, and they came together because there was the two sides. There was the garment maker and there was the textile industry, and both of them were talking to each other. They were saying, I deliver the fabric and you keep quiet, so you have to make a garment out of it. So, but we saw the necessity already there at this time to come together, work and communicate together, because even before the year 2000, a lot of things growing up like sustainability, long before the detox campaign started from Greenpeace and others, which we have right now. And it changed dramatically. So it is a necessary thing to talk, to open up the books, to talk to each other. And there's one important issue that you need to do, yet you have to keep up, and this is the trust and the confidence. So when you talk with the suppliers, with the garment makers, even with the textile, the tier 2, tier 3 level suppliers, you have to build up a room to be confident, to open up, to see what are the points, to get to know each other more, and to listen what is the needs of the other side, of the people there. So coming back to your question, is that in the beginning, and you mentioned we have one big customer who has introduced us to Cradle to Cradle. We were following up this. We did a lot of sustainability issues, and we have a full approach, and we have, this is very much important, the full back of the management, family owners here in terms of sustainability. So we did this almost 10 years back. We're starting with small initiatives, and it comes to a point, it was almost 2016, 2017, where we were invited for a big project in Bangladesh, where a lot of experts came to the country and to talk to the composite factories, mostly, that these companies has to change something in a way of doing their dyeing and fabric facilities. So they have to use better dye stuffs, they have to use better cotton, and they have to invest, and they have to spend more money. And while I was there, all the factory owners, they were laughing at us, and they were saying, oh, we cannot do, the price pressure is so high, why we have to do this exported chemicals, the dye stuffs, auxiliaries, they're so expensive, and even the cotton, you request a better cotton, but on the other side you have to lower the price again and again. So but luckily, to the power of the organization and the customer in the back, we were able to really follow it up. And at this time, we were working a lot with the people, with the factory, with the management, with the dye staff managers in the factories. And we found out that after a while, they started thinking, oh, if I use this dye stuff, it's maybe more expensive in the beginning, but it's less costly at the end of the day, because I can save energy, I can save water, I can really benefit from that one. And if I use a better cotton quality, all the processes will be easier, it will be better for handling, even the machinery setup will be better for us. So it was really learning by doing, and nowadays they're really demanding more input from us. So actually this is the perfect point where we're right now, that these factory owners and the management, especially in Bangladesh, where we're doing most of our products, as I said, are really listening, are really open to that point.
Interesting point, Andreas. And before I'd like to dive more into transparency, I'd like to hand over to Alex, because I would be very interested. My question is, could you confirm of that, or have you had comparable situations investing on the one hand in, for example, better dyes and then saving costs later on? I mean, you have had I don't know, 1 or 2 years of project I guess with CNA and helping them to finally introducing a lot of textiles on the market. What are your experience on that change process? In many cases they've started from scratch, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk about the internal financials from our clients, yeah, but so generally I would say in CE projects generally, yeah, it holds true. Not in every case. So there's a couple of things I would call quick wins, yeah. So for example, if you're using better dye stuff and you are having costs at the water treatment side, yeah. So if you're not in India but in other places, you're actually paying for water treatment at the end of the processes. If you're using, for example, organic dye stuff, which costs you about double the cost of the original sourcing, if you're taking chemicals, you can use bacteria in the water to actually clean the water, and you're getting much higher degrees of water cleanliness after the processes. If that transfers into cheaper cost of releasing water and so on, you have a business case right there. Yeah, just an example. Or if you, for example, if you're taking certain types of cotton and you're not trying to put dark color in it, but other types of color, you can reduce the heating and the processes by half. Yeah, if you halve the time of the processes, you're saving energy costs. If your energy costs are from coal-fired power plants, or if your energy costs are from wood-fired furnaces, you're heating yourself, you're saving costs on the raw materials, and you're reducing your carbon footprint. So yes, there are those examples, and Andreas mentioned a couple of those. That's also how the t-shirts that, for example, CNA brought on the market remained at the same price while being still Cradle to Cradle certified, because you are investing in certain parts, but you are reducing costs on the other element. That's the one way how you can make a business case work. The other one is, if you are thinking through, you're actually, after you're selling the t-shirt or you're selling the garment or you're selling the product, right? If someone else repairs it, someone else makes money with that. If someone else picks it up and resells it for a second or a third time, someone else makes money with it. So what you can also think through as a business is, how do you think about the ownership of those products, materials? Maybe for you, it might actually be interesting to take it back yourself, or to offer a service system and then resell it a second or third time as a business, rather than giving that business to someone else. So there are those business cases, and also for large corporates, it's quite interesting and quite attractive to further investigate those. I want to also be transparent though, this does not work for every product. So if you're looking at jeans, for example, as a garment, that's a much more challenging process than a basic cotton t-shirt. Yeah. If you're looking at sneakers, for example, shoes, running shoes, Adidas has done a different route. Yeah. They went for the ocean plastics, where you're collecting ocean plastics. You're then offering it as Parley ocean plastic shoes, and you're putting a premium. Instead of selling them for 120, you're selling it for 150 euros or something like that. So there are a lot of different value pools as a business where you can actually make a good business out of it, but while at the same time being responsible and more sustainable in the value chain. But those are unfortunately not mainstream yet. Yeah. So I mean, not everyone can afford sneakers for 150 bucks and so on. And I think that's really, we need to identify the easy ones, yeah, and businesses are investigating those, certainly not as quickly as they should be, but they are. And we also need to think through how to make it more mainstream and affordable for broader society. And I think transparency, Meshba, can certainly help in that part. Yeah, absolutely. Handing over to Meshba, I think one question we handle later, which I find interesting, diving into that example of Parley, because I think it raises the question. We could ask that in a few minutes to Friederike. It raises the question if this material is really circular ready. Is it really material healthy? I think we should continue in some minutes on that. Meshba, one thing is, just in the very beginning, blockchain technology.
many people know the term, don't understand it. Could you just quickly give us an idea what your blockchain technology is doing differently in terms of security?
What ours is doing differently, or what blockchain in general is doing?
I think both. This is interesting.
Okay, all right. So blockchain in general, the way you can look at it is that it's bringing certain aspects to the digital realm that we have never had before, right? So previously, if you were on a digital computer or a digital system, there were no things as scarcity. I mean, if I send you a WhatsApp with an image, you can take that image and send it to your other network participants as much as you like. There is no scarcity that you can only have like we all know copy paste, right? You can take something in a digital waste and copy and paste it. And the only way to prevent that, so you don't want to be able to somebody to have their digital bank account copy paste their balance and have more money. The only way to prevent that previously was to appoint a central authority, like have one central company like a bank or another organization to do this for you, and everybody would have to trust them that this is happening correctly. So this is what blockchain is bringing by design, by building the scarcity, digital scarcity, in the fabric of the system instead of trusting and appointing all the trust to a central authority. Where it now kind of becomes very interesting for issues where there is not a lot of trust, such as supply chains and transparency. So that's really what blockchain brings to the table. I would not say that blockchain is the only solution that we will need to become more transparent in supply chains. It's definitely an important part, but it's definitely also not the silver bullet that we can use and then everything is then solved, because you can also put untrue data or falsified data on a blockchain. Doesn't make it true just because it's on a blockchain, right? So it's just one piece of the equation. And then to come back to the other question, how we are using it differently, you can see blockchains as a public ledger. At least a public blockchain is fully public and everybody can look at it. And in the best case scenario, everybody can participate, such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. You can not only view what's happening there, but you can also participate and validate the information. So if you're talking about these kind of blockchains where it's fully decentralized, there's an extremely high level of trust because it's fully public and everybody can participate. There's no safeguard or fence or consortium that need you to join and ask a permission. You raise another problem. By doing that, you raise the problem or you create the problem of privacy and confidentiality. So why should companies in the supply chain all put their data on this public blockchain where everybody can view, like literally your neighbor can go online and they can view all the data there? So contrary to popular belief, blockchain is creating trust, but they're taking away privacy. Unless you go for a closed system blockchain, which we don't really believe in, because that means that you still have to trust this closed consortium or more closed system and appoint as a central authority there. And especially when you're talking about supply chains, as many of you might know, that there is so much complexity and so much happening across industries that you can't have one single solution. Often companies are not only sourcing from like farms in Africa, but are also sourcing from billion-dollar companies in Europe and other suppliers in Asia. And you can't possibly think of a scenario where they're all using the same consortium blockchain. So having an open blockchain is super important, but then you create this privacy issue. And that's where you have to use different technologies, what we're mainly focusing on, to enable you to talk about private information on a public system, which is the core of our patent pending technology. To instead of putting everything out there, you put what we call a commitment or a manifest on chain, and that allows any supplier to make statements about their operations while remaining fully anonymous and protecting all their confidential data, like transactions, etc.
That's interesting because Andreas just beforehand said part of the change within the company was establishing trust and confidence. And sometimes, because in cases it's about holding the property and legals and all that, and you're stating out transparency. I mean, transparency is such a big word. What do you think, like, on those both sides? Where are we standing? What do we need from your perspective for changing those very complex, very long supply chains globally?
I think we need to change the narrative from transparency being a solution where you just need to give your data, right? So like literally transparency is please give me your bill of materials, or please give me your other sensitive data, which we know that it's not going to work at scale. You might be able to pull off a pilot or two with a few companies, but at scale, companies are simply not going to do that. As was mentioned before, it's just not in their nature of how they do business, and that's not going to happen at scale. We have done scenarios where we think, what would happen if we would actually do this, and the results could be really, really bad, especially for smaller players in the industry who might not be able to afford losing some of their confidential data and supply chain position by sharing that information. So a shift is required, I would say, from transparency meaning share your data towards transparency meaning make statements that we can trust based on verified or systems that can actually validate that. So instead of requiring the bill of materials from a supplier, you require that supplier to make certain statements about that bill of materials and prove that those statements are correct or generated in a way that they can't possibly falsify with, etc., based on third-party audit documents, etc. So that's what really transparency means for us, where companies can share data, and depending on the sensitivity of that data, they can fine-tune that, right? So is it simply something that I fully want to disclose? Is it something that I want to not disclose, but I just want to make a statement about it and prove that the statement is correct? And that's really where we see transparency bringing value without risking something else for any company.
Interesting. Thank you, Friederike. I'd like to hand over to you because early on, Parley, Adidas was mentioned. We are in some cases, and this is one of them, Cradle to Cradle NGOs criticizing that in some cases we lose the perspective of defined and healthy materials. And I find it sometimes difficult to see that companies, they're really trying to establish the circular economy, and I find it important, no doubt about it. What is your opinion on those? And I think there's many other cases where we try to recycle material which is already there. Is this the right answer to what you are doing with Cradle to Cradle and redesigning products?
So first of all, I estimate the educational value of an initiative like Parley for the Oceans as very high. So I don't want to criticize Parley as a system or as a brand in particular, because I also benefit from that communication in my quest for a circular economy. So those initiatives are really important because they do something really good. They make the topic sustainability nice and hot and something that you want to have. And this is moving our altogether quest in such a high speed that we can be very, very many intelligent people and tell intelligent strategies. But with this one move, and you get the consumer to the point to really then make the right decision. So that was very important for me. Regarding the materials, of course, in terms of ocean plastic and recycling of products, this is a whole different discussion. And we have to look at the major problem that we're facing in textile industry, which is this big mountain of wasted textiles that is, as the trend studies are showing, growing within the next 5 years, because the world population will be growing and the consumption will be growing. So we will be consuming, and I'm always talking about we as the people living on this planet, we will be consuming more products and ditching them faster. So this mountain will increase, and we have different options here to decrease that mountain. One is we do nothing and leave it to our children. Of course, this is none of our business here. Second option would be to take some parts of this waste, of the textile waste mountain, and take it from the ocean, from landfills, from wherever you find it, and make products out of it. This is something that ocean plastic recycling is doing. So then you have this product made out of recycled content. So you decrease that increase of the textile waste mountain a little bit, but you did not provide a solution for an infinite use of raw materials, because this product in the end will be thrown away as well. So you have a little decrease of the textile waste mountain, but you did not provide a solution for an infinite use of a resource. Adding to this, the material health discussion for materials, you know that for cradle to cradle assessment, the 3 aspects are assessed, which is one, the origin of the material. So is it a bio-based material? Is it a virgin petrol-based product, which 60% of all textile fibers worldwide are. So we're facing a real big origin in the petrochemistry here. And this is the first assessment of cradle to cradle. The second assessment is what is the material health part doing while this product is used. And in this case, if we have a material black box, as ocean recycling also is, we have a lot of negative effects on the environment and on the people using those products. Of course, we pass several residue testing on the all over standard chemical tests, but recycled ocean plastic today contains antimony, which is a toxin, which is a toxic heavy metal, and has nothing to do in a product that is used today by sports people or by children or by anyone. So this is just not the right way to bring a benefit to a safe and circular economy. And in the end product, of course, also a product made out of recycled plastic will not be provided into a take-back system. So we did not provide a solution there. So I guess this part is very clear. So we don't have a real solution for good with recycling ocean plastic. But of course, like everyone wants to jump on that communication wave of saving the oceans. And this is what we all want to do, but we need to make it right, as we all have the tools and we have the techniques to provide such a regenerative circular economy. And why not thinking about those solutions first?
Thanks, Friederike. Yeah, Alex just brought up the point. That's why I'd like to hand over. I used it for a controversy, no offense, because I totally get it right. It really helps in communicating and broadening the way I think everyone, let's say society is looking at, because still those discussions like we do today, this is a very tiny fraction of what actually needs to be done. There's so many people out there not having any clue. So I actually agree with both of you, Alex and Friederike, that whether still probably it's not the right material, still it's helpful to communicate that way of circular economy thinking. I really do so. Alex, what do you think, especially in those terms of using it for communication and doing it for the better, of course, doing it for the transformation? What do you think? What are those, like, especially for those large and global corporations, big multinationals you're working with at BCG? What needs to change within these corporations? What are those probably are those obstacles in those very big organizational forms?
So I take it as 2 questions. The first one, and I think Friederike put it really nicely, yeah. This is only the start of the beginning, and it does help to create excitement for it, while this is certainly not the best product. I mean, you can argue that about probably 99% of all the recycling we do, yeah. So wherever. So unless you have a bottle-to-bottle recycling, which is the only plastics recycling where you're actually keeping the material in its original product and you can reuse it 15, 20 times, we do not have closed loops right now. I mean, let's be very clear on this. Even for all the textiles that account for being recycled, they go into automotive or other type of industries, and then you can't really extract the material back from those, so you can only do energy recovery, which bluntly says is incineration. Yeah, best case, we're getting power out of it. So I think we are at pretty much any industry, especially in the polymers area, we are at the challenge. We don't have perfectly circular loops now. Yeah, so we need to do something now, and we need to find the larger technology solution. The larger solutions, and that's going to your second question. What's the holdback within businesses? I would say they are extremely multifold. Yeah. But the first one is, it's such a big and vast challenge that businesses on their own cannot solve that challenge. I want to be very explicit here, because I mean, I'm responsible for the whole waste management and recycling space across materials in BCG. Every day I'm having discussions that businesses and corporates want to do that. They do find thousands of alliances. They spend a lot of money, which doesn't go to their profits. For example, Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which is in Southeast Asia, and others, where they're trying to find solutions. The problem is it's so complex that you need to bring all stakeholders together. Yeah. So even if Adidas would find a solution to recycle some kind of cotton, yeah. So if, for example, do a C&A, yeah, do the C2C certified t-shirt. The problem is you don't have the recycling streams. We toss it into a bin where you have 10, 15 different garments in there. How is the sorter supposed to know that this C&A t-shirt can actually be recycled and composted, and the dye stuff and the coloring is good enough so you're not harming the earth, yeah, or the compost, versus then you got a different brand t-shirt which is 20% cotton, 80% polyester, and then you got 100% polyester, which you can't really separate, or it's too expensive to put on all the infrastructure. And that's really the main challenge why systematically we don't scale the technical solutions we have, number one. Number two is the financials. And I don't want to go into a system critics debate here or whatever, but across most Western countries, management is incentivized to optimize for profits, because that secures jobs, employment, and whatever. We do see it in the Corona stuff. Yeah? I mean, some of those helps are questionable for some of the industry sectors, but it's all about employment and jobs. So you want to keep your business going, and that's your primary role. As a business, you're too small to just scale a new technology. I mean, think about plastics recycling. We got mechanical recycling, we got the infrastructure, we're sorting it. Still, if you look behind the scenes, we're not using the material wisely to get new products in. And I think that's the second part. Yeah, the challenge is too big for one corporate. So we need to find alliances, partners that can scale it. And then thirdly, it is complex. I mean, Friederike, you know, from your projects, you're doing one pilot project that might take half a year, and then you have one t-shirt out there. A corporate runs on, and Andreas, you know that better than I do, but you guys are probably designing 50, 100 garments within 2 or 3 weeks, right? And until you've changed those processes, that takes a while, yeah? So I don't want to be speaking in favor of industry or business here, because don't take me wrong, I think we need to scale it much more and much quickly. But unless consumers pay for it and actually understand what they are paying for, unless government regulates more, by the way, that's also civil society, and we are voting, and we could ask the regulators to do it. Some businesses are already trying to do what they do. Certainly not all of them, but that's part of the incentive structure.
Thanks,
and then
Alex,
the operations is extremely challenging.
Thank you for mentioning all those points and topics. Andreas, just to come to that question of scaling up, what would you answer to that question? Probably more or less handing over that, the challenge of scaling, not only having 1 or 2 prototypes. I mean, you've done prototypes. I'm not sure if this is in that sort or way correct, but if this is a topic for the future, also of the success of your company, what do you think? How can a company like yours really scaling this topic up in all those various spots where change needs to happen?
What we're doing, as Alex also mentioned correctly, is that we're doing a lot of new ideas day by day. So we have a design team who's working 24 hours to having new ideas, creating things. And the business is like that we still have to move and we have to bring some new collections. And this is really, we really are on up tempo right now. But at the same time, we have to look for some answers. And of course, it's correct. We cannot do this by our own, but at least we can start with these things. And this is the important point. So we have seen that especially the cradle to cradle idea is one really looking to the details more than other projects what we have accompanied. So there are different standards. We are most of them holding them, but the cradle to cradle is the only one where you're really looking into all the details, not just having a certificate from A to B. So here we came together with Friederike and EPEA that we have found with them a partner who is like in between and can be really trustful also for other partners involved in a supply chain. And what we did is that of course, we're doing some prototypes and we are now planning a collection coming into the market later this year. So we're not finished with all the points and open questions. There are still a lot of, and just for example, today I just had a meeting with a sewing thread supplier, with the garment maker, with the dye stuff supplier, this all through an online chat. And of course, our colleagues in Bangladesh as well. We all sit together, we discussed a very special point, how to deal with that. And now we have to do trials and error to move a little bit in this way. And then when it comes to the chemistry, for example, we have to involve Friederike and her team that they really assessed everything very much in detail with their part of experts. They're exchanging themselves with the chemical company. So we're not doing this in the first way. This is the job then of the chemical experts from EPEA together with the chemical companies, for example, to find out what is the issue here, to change it, to make it worse, to really make it C2C certified chemicals, for example, just being on that field. You can name all the accessories as well. And with this information, we are going back also to our production line where we want to add more and more smaller parts. For example, we have changed a couple of years back the printing. And Friederike knows very well that she put a lot of effort with the team together with the chemical companies to really invent the print pastes to be really C2C certified, not to harm the environment. So this print paste we are now using for most of our printing stuffs. Wherever we can do this, wherever we can do it and without any limitation, we're going to use this. And we will do this step by step. So we don't have that kind of project for one item. We want to distribute it into all the different aspects and different parts. But of course, we're having our own collection. We are now building up and we're working very close with Friederike to put everything here inside, to learn from how to deal with it, and then to expand it to other brands of our own company and offer it to customers as well.
What I'd like to do now is bringing some of the questions from our audience to the stage now. Meshba, I hope you could probably answer this because our first question is really like techie-like, and as you are the tech guy in this on this panel, I give you that question if you probably try to answer it, because the question is, I'm interested in the topic of artificial intelligence. So where's changes for the textiles industry, improving designs, tracing, and also about the knowledge of material? Are there ideas? Do you have some, not only with regard to blockchain, but to AI as well?
Yeah, there are a lot of AI examples that you can use to improve, circularity and transparency and as well as recycling. We have had some experiences. So we're not doing that as a company today, but we do have some in our network that use AI. There is a nice example from the UK. There's a startup called Grey Parrot using AI to make sorting decisions at the assembly belt or at the recycling facility where products are coming in, and using AI and image recognition, they can make very quick sorting decisions. and it's not perfect, but as it is AI, it's learning more and more. And we've had a lot of experiences with this as well, where companies do have a lot of information, but it's manual, like humans doing that calculation and looking at the streams today. So yeah, I would say definitely AI is a big part of making those processes more efficient. And yeah, I can give you more examples if you like later on to do a deep dive. But it's a whole topic that we could discuss for hours.
A whole special, a special panel only on AI.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mesbah. Another question from the audience is, would it be better as priority to focus on reusing only waste instead of producing new products? Of course, with the help of technology and with cross-sector collaboration. Who'd like to answer on this question from the panel?
I guess its quick answer is yes,
Alex.
It would be better. It's technology extremely challenging. So I don't want to go into the material science behind it. And yes, we need to get there, period. The planet will be extracted soon. We don't have enough resources to keep that growth going. We all know the climate discussion. So yes, we need to reuse materials. But let me be quite honest here. I don't only believe in recycling. I think we should also sincerely question frequency and lifetime of materials, because recycling requires energy, requires water to repurpose materials. So we should also question ourselves on behavior. Shouldn't we be using the stuff we buy much, much longer and much more frequently in order to reduce virgin resource consumption?
So the question of longevity, Friederike, you would probably answer to this or add something?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that suggestion from Alex, which involves change of the consumption behavior somehow. So involve new systems that have a longer use of the products, for example. This takes a long time to change the consumption behavior, and it's a really big societal to do. So we are not the experts here that can solve this, I guess. And the other thing is also to develop better recycling technologies that can make golden materials out of waste. And this is also quite cost intensive and mostly not the specific know-how part that a company has.
Probably to more precisely ask the question, do you think we need more technological innovation still, or is there technologies available already and it's just about to bring them into action? What do you think?
I think that it takes a lot of time and money to bring them into action, and we can provide a better solution by now by redesigning the products according to Cradle, where we have that technical cycle which addresses all those longer use of the textile, which addresses repair system, reuse system, but has a managed system of textiles. But we can also today make textile products that are completely safe for the biosphere. So no matter where they end up, as long as we were not able to change the consumption behavior or have the right recycling technology in place, are already a good impact on the society and on the environment. And this was the last option I wanted to mention that really is a solution today to find a circular product that works in that system. So one thing I'd like to add to the discussion around the artificial intelligence and all the processes is just a basic thing. If we make a wrong process digital, we just have a wrong digital process. So really setting up that that transparency and the ability to have a quality assessment for materials and have the circular economy in mind while developing products for this is really, really important. And Andreas, maybe you can add this to this discussion after the questions, because I really saw in the last years that they have been learning on the sides of the companies. So companies do not want to make that one pilot product and then don't talk about it anymore. They really want to go for a portfolio approach and also implement
Definitely.
those learnings from one product to others. Maybe you can add something here.
Andreas, yeah, you'd like to add to this?
Definitely, Friederike is totally right. So it doesn't make a sense to make one pilot product to see how it is working, and then we're going for another issue. As I mentioned a couple of times before, we're doing a lot of things, and now we have reached a point where cradle to cradle is really a definitive goal. So it's so precious, so important for us that we really want to put this as the own part. So I don't want to call it a future lab or design lab or what so on. What we do is really a hands-on mentality. We really want to we really find solutions, we want to try things, and we want to move forward with this one. And at the end of the day, there should be a garment which is very, in terms of quality, very high level and really precious, that you really look into your garment as one you have to make some service which you can give maybe for some repairing, and yet you can wear it again and again. Like a pair of denim is getting better and better within the years. So you find people who are just looking for that expensive denims which are totally old and rubbish. So these are the things which are somehow precious. So to bring the value back to the garment, it must be an important goal for us as the company, not to make a garment which is thrown away after a while.
Thank you. And one more point to MESPA, because we've heard about wrong digital processes. As far as I see, you're taking care of so many of those digital processes. From your point of view, is there data involved where you think that's probably wrongly tracked or not as important as other, probably not only quantitative but qualitative aspects we should more and more track to get the circular economy, to get cradle to cradle more started?
Yeah, so I can share a little bit on how we see data evolving as in the tracking as well. I think what is important to understand is to see digital practices, especially when it comes to traceability, in some sort of a spectrum. It's not a switch that you can turn on and off. There's many different flavors of traceability, and it has mostly to do with how do you validate data, as well as how do you preserve that chain of custody, right? So to bring it from one company all the way to another in a supply chain. And there's two matrices, and you can be on all kinds of locations in that. So I think on the first axis, in the vertical axis, you can plot basically how companies are validating data, and it starts with self-reporting, where they just make statements, and then goes to like yearly audits, and then eventually ends up at a real-time audit with IoT sensors that are sealed and then capturing data real-time at the location. And then on the horizontal axis, you can think of different chain of custody models where you start with a chain of custody model that is really based on what we are used to in like certificate trading, right? So you're talking about doing something at one place and then completely making a claim somewhere else where there's no connection. And then one step further would be what we're probably all very used to is mass balancing, where you take into account input processing as well as output of every facility. And then the holy grail would be really identity preservation, chain of custody models, where you have a one-on-one permanent connection between any digital claim or digital proof and that physical asset, which is usually done using chemical tracers or artificial DNA that you connect with a digital traceability. So yeah, that's how we usually think about it, and we see oftentimes industries being at different places, and I would say specifically textiles are quite the front runners there, where we do see more and more tracers being implemented, combined with digital technologies. And if you would go to other markets, they are lacking, I would say, compared to textiles. So that's in a way a good thing, but still, if you look at the overall portfolio, there's a lot to be done in terms of that.
Thank you. So interesting to listen to all of you guys. I'm very grateful to have these wonderful insights and thoughts on these topics we all share. And we're almost running out of time now. So from my side, there's one final question. And if you don't mind, would you be so kind and answer it rather short? because not too much time left, but a question from the audience, and would be a question from my side to the very end now. System change is the way to go, so I think everyone is more or less fine with this. How to make it work now, since it's not working today? So I'm aware of that answering short is, is not easy, but probably starting with you, Mesbah, and everybody with a short closing statement, please.
Could you repeat the question, please?
No, the question is system change. We need the system change, but how can we actually do it? What do you think? What are the next steps, so to say?
So one step that we are really, really passionate about is having systematic change in the form of an open protocol approach. Yeah, without taking too long to answer this, we are really big fans of open approaches where there is open protocols, alliances, and almost open source ways of doing stuff, as opposed to closed siloed approaches that don't communicate with each other. So yeah, I would leave it with that. I think that's a really important part towards driving systemic change and not relying on single solutions.
Thank you very much. Andreas, what do you think?
I mean, for us as the garment company, being in a garment business where a lot of things are handmade, we really need to do it step by step. And this approach is also one thing which we found for our collection, because our collection is called in the Italian way detto fatto, which means said and done. So we're taking things, we try things, and we move on. So this is the way we want to continue, and we want to start with our change here.
Thank you very much. Alex, what are your thoughts?
3 quick things. We are all part of the society, so we are all part of the problem, but can also be part of the solution. Private consumption behavior. Inform yourself, think about what you're buying, think about how often you're buying, what you spend your money on, and make sure that your friends and family do the same. That's the largest and quickest impact how you can move industry to change. Secondly, think about regulation. Think about whom you vote. Think about the policy field. Greta has probably achieved more on the climate debate in the last 2 years than any scientist has done over the last 50 years. So there is quick impact we can generate. And then thirdly, we are all part of businesses. Business is nothing else but our decisions, but our employers. We all are part of the organizations. So drive change from within. And if those 3 things come together, we can accelerate change very quickly. And we can all be part of that positive change.
Thank you. And last but not least, Friederike.
Yeah, I'm also really promoting Alex's last point as well, to decide for whom you're working for. So you can really make a big impact in taking your expertise and putting into the right system. And to find a solution on that systemic level, where we're talking about a circular economy that will be safe and circular, we need to redesign the system as itself. But the real redesign, and here we are at the fatto part from Andreas's detto fatto branding. So where we can really implement and make it happen is that we redesign on a material level. So we bring back that information to the right people that can assess and then guide the design, guide the product development to really implement circular products. And we're at EPEA are working towards this common goal of every one of us. So we're promoting this also in finding a digital solution for having, on the one side, a transparency on the materials, but having the confidentiality as a USP for the company. And I think with this, we can scale it up also in complex supply chains like we're facing here in the textile industry.
Thank you very much. That was Friederike Priebe, Alexander Meyer zum Felde, Andreas Bothe, and Mesbah Sabur. Thank you very much for your time and for all the insights. And thanks for joining us on the C2C Summit on Textiles. Thanks. And for everyone out there, we do a quick break of 5 minutes and see each other again with our final keynote of Vandana Shiva, which I think we are all very much looking forward live from India. So just join us back in a couple of minutes and see you till then.